Imagine knowing there is an elite kill squad hunting you down across the globe. You change your name, your face, your country. You feel safe. But then, the telephone in your luxury apartment rings. You pick it up, and in a fraction of a second, your life ends. This wasn't a Hollywood movie. It was the most relentless surgical revenge operation in human history. In September 1972, the world watched in horror as the Munich Olympics became a bloodbath. 11 Israeli athletes were taken hostage and murdered by a radical faction known as Black September, but the television cameras didn't capture what happened next. Behind closed doors, Israel's prime minister issued a single, highly classified order: send forth the boys. What followed was Operation Wrath of God, a phantom unit from the Mossad unleashed across Europe and the Middle East. They had no official existence, a blank check, and one chilling objective: hunt down every single man responsible for the massacre. No trials, no arrests, just total, calculated elimination. Imagine knowing there is an elite kill squad hunting you down across the globe. You change your name, your face, your country. You think you are safe. But then, the telephone in your luxury apartment rings. You pick it up, and in a fraction of a second, your life ends. This wasn't a Hollywood movie. It was the most relentless surgical revenge operation in human history. In September 1972, the world watched in horror as the Munich Olympics became a bloodbath. 11 Israeli athletes were taken hostage and murdered by the radical faction known as Black September. The tragedy was broadcast to millions. But the television cameras didn't capture what happened next. Behind closed doors in Tel Aviv, Israel's Prime Minister Golda Meir issued a single, highly classified directive: send forth the boys. What followed was Operation Wrath of God. A phantom unit from the Mossad, Israel's feared intelligence agency, was unleashed across Europe and the Middle East. They had no official existence, a black budget, and one chilling objective: hunt down every single man responsible for the Munich massacre. No trials, no arrests, just total calculated elimination. The Mossad began assembling their specialized hit teams, known as Kidon, the bayonet. These weren't regular soldiers in uniform. They were ghosts, specialists in covert explosives, close quarters assassination, and deep cover espionage. Their hit list was long, and their first target was Wael Zweiter, a key Black September organizer living a quiet, unassuming life in Rome. To the Italian authorities, Zweiter was just a polite translator and poet. But as he walked into the dimly lit lobby of his apartment building on a quiet October night in 1972, he was completely unaware that two shadows had been waiting for him in the dark. He reached for the elevator button, but instead of the mechanical hum of the doors opening, he was met with the deafening roar of 14 suppressed gunshots. A brutal opening statement that sent a shockwave through the global terror network and proved that nowhere on earth was safe from the wrath of the Kidon. The echo of the 14 shots in Rome sent a very clear message to the underground terror networks. The hunt had begun. Black September operatives scattered across Europe. Safe houses were abandoned. Paranoia infected the ranks. But the Mossad wasn't just looking for foot soldiers, they wanted the architects. Their crosshairs shifted to Paris, locking onto Mahmoud Hamshari. As a high-level coordinator for the Munich attack, Hamshari knew he was a marked man. He was constantly on high alert, deeply embedded in the French capital, and his apartment was treated like a sanctuary. A street-level ambush or a sniper shot was deemed too risky, carrying a high chance of civilian casualties or drawing the fury of the French police. The Kidon needed to strike Hamshari where he felt invincible, behind his own locked doors. In December 1972, the Mossad orchestrated a flawless tactical diversion. An agent posing as an Italian journalist lured Hamshari out of his apartment for an exclusive interview at a local cafe. The moment the target sat down for his coffee, a shadow team of Kidon technical specialists quietly picked the locks of his home. They didn't rig a massive, reckless car bomb. They engineered an instrument of surgical destruction. The infiltration team carefully dismantled the base of Hamshari's telephone and replaced it with a custom-milled replica. Inside this perfect copy was a tightly packed, lethal payload of military-grade RDX explosives. The trap was set. The hunters retreated to a safe distance. The next morning, the journalists call Hamshari's number. The telephone rang loudly in the Paris apartment. A man picked up the receiver. "Are you Mahmoud Hamshari?" the agent asked. "Yes," the voice replied. That single word was his death warrant. A remote electronic signal was transmitted straight down the telephone line, instantly detonating the RDX. The blast vaporized the desk and mortally wounded the architect of terror, but as the smoke cleared in Paris, the Mossad was already tracking a new target in Cyprus, a man who was about to discover that even a good night's sleep could be weaponized against him. In January 1973, the crosshairs settled on Nicosia, Cyprus. The target was Hussein al-Bashir, a vital liaison to the KGB and a prominent figure in the Black September network. Al-Bashir was terrified. He knew about the bullets in Rome and the telephone in Paris. To stay alive, he confined himself to the Olympic Hotel, meticulously checking his room and locking his door every night. He believed his isolation was his armor. But the Kidon didn't need to break down his door. They just needed to get there before he did. While al-Bashir was out for a brief meeting, Mossad technicians slipped into his room. They bypassed his luggage and his furniture, focusing entirely on the bed. They surgically implanted pressure-sensitive explosive charges underneath the springs of his mattress, meticulously wiring them to a remote receiver. When al-Bashir returned, he locked the door, turned off the lights, and lay down to sleep. The moment his body weight settled onto the mattress, the pressure sensors armed the firing circuit. Watching from the darkness outside, an operative verified the target was in position and triggered the signal. The blast ripped through the hotel room, eliminating the target and delivering a chilling psychological blow to the terror network. The Mossad could literally reach into your dreams, but surgical strikes and booby traps were taking too long. The top tier of the Black September leadership had retreated to what they believed was an impenetrable fortress, the Lebanese capital of Beirut. They were surrounded by heavily armed militias, fortified apartment blocks, and thousands of PLO fighters. A quiet assassination here was impossible. The Mossad realized they couldn't just send spies, they needed an army. In a historic escalation, intelligence gathered by the Kidon was handed over to Israel's most elite military tier, Sayeret Matkal. In April 1973, in an operation dubbed Spring of Youth, amphibious commandos landed silently on the beaches of Beirut under the cover of darkness. To bypass the heavily armed street patrols without triggering an alarm, the strike team, led by future Prime Minister Ehud Barak, resorted to a brilliant, highly unorthodox disguise. They were deep behind enemy lines, walking straight into the lion's den, but infiltrating the heavily guarded terrorist stronghold was only the beginning. What awaited them inside those apartments would ignite one of the most ferocious close-quarters gunfights the Middle East had ever seen. To bypass the heavily armed street patrols of Beirut, Ehud Barak and his elite commandos didn't wear stealth gear or black tactical uniforms. They wore wigs, heavy makeup, and loose-fitting dresses, walking arm in arm with other operatives to look like couples returning from a night out. The disguised Sayeret Matkal soldiers casually strolled past the guards of the PLO strongholds. Their flowing garments perfectly concealed suppressed Uzi submachine guns and high-explosive breaching charges. The element of surprise was absolute. Upon reaching the target apartment blocks, the couples instantly dropped the act. Breaching charges shattered the reinforced doors, blowing them completely off their hinges. The commandos flooded the corridors, violently transitioning from a silent infiltration into a deafening high-speed tactical assault. In less than 30 minutes of brutal room-to-room combat, they located and neutralized 3 of the highest-ranking Black September leaders. As the gunfire woke the surrounding city, the streets erupted into total chaos. Armed militias and local security forces swarmed the area, initiating a fierce, suppressive firefight, but the extraction was just as surgical as the breach. The Israeli operatives fought a rapid retreating battle, laying down a wall of heavy machine gun fire as they fought their way back to the Zodiac boats waiting on the shoreline. Operation Spring of Youth was a devastating, unprecedented show of force. The Mossad had proven they could reach anywhere, even the heart of a hostile capital, and bring down the wrath of the entire Israeli military, but the ultimate prize still eluded them. The mastermind behind the Munich massacre, a charismatic and elusive phantom known as the Red Prince, Ali Hassan Salameh, was still breathing. The absolute obsession to hunt him down would push the Mossad to the very edge, blinding their intelligence network to a catastrophic flaw. A fatal misidentification that was about to spill innocent blood on the quiet, snow-covered streets of Norway. In July 1973, the Kidon tracked the man they believed was the Red Prince to the quiet, freezing town of Lillehammer, Norway. Blinded by the desperation to close the net, the hit squad moved in quickly. As the target walked home from a local cinema with his pregnant wife, the operative stepped out of the shadows and opened fire. But the man bleeding out in the Norwegian snow was not the mastermind of Munich. He was Ahmed Bouchiki, an innocent Moroccan waiter who bore a tragic fatal resemblance to Salame. The Lillehammer affair was a catastrophic intelligence failure. Norwegian police locked down the city and captured several Mossad agents, blowing the lid off the entire covert operation. The invincible Phantom Squad was suddenly dragged into the blinding light of international outrage. Facing intense global pressure, Israel was forced to call off the kill teams. Operation Wrath of God was abruptly suspended, but the Mossad never forgets. For 5 years, they waited in the shadows, slowly rebuilding their intelligence web. In 1979, they finally cornered the real Ali Hassan Salame. He was living openly in Beirut, surrounded by a heavy security detail, confident that he had outlived the wrath of Israel. This time, there would be no mistaken identity and no close quarters infiltration. The Kidon rented an apartment overlooking Salame's daily travel route and parked a Volkswagen packed with 100 kilograms of heavy explosives right on the street corner. On January 22nd, as Salame's heavily armed convoy rolled past the vehicle, a Mossad agent watching from a balcony pressed a single button. The shockwave shattered the street, instantly obliterating the Red Prince's vehicle and bringing a definitive, brutal end to the architect of the Munich massacre. Operation Wrath of God redefined the very nature of modern espionage and counterterrorism. It proved that a nation could project lethal force across the globe, operating entirely outside the boundaries of international law to turn the hunters into the hunted. But it also left a dark, lingering legacy, a grim military lesson that when a state wages a shadow war of absolute vengeance, the fog of war guarantees that collateral damage will be paid in innocent blood. The rules of engagement are rarely written in black and white. If you want to uncover the true tactical breakdowns of the most classified, high-stakes military operations in history, hit the subscribe button, leave a comment on which conflict we should declassify next, and stay sharp.